right, chat. Welcome to the show. I just want to say that I just had a first. I me and Blaine were ready to go at 9:30, and my internet shit the bed right at the last minute. And so as I'm playing around with my internet connection, Watcher jumps in, and so I pop in for my trusty cell phone, and Watcher is already in with Blaine. I thought Watcher had gone live with the shows at that point, and I thought we were on the air for the last 10 minutes. So first time for everything. Yeah, that's a professional YouTuber there for you. No worries, no big deal. I don't think we lost anything. We were just kind of chit-chatting. So one of the things that I want to kind of focus on, Blaine, we've got you for about 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. So I want to kind of, I want to spend some time geeking out on on the design of Land&SEA. Well, one of the big parts of when I got onboarded with you and Brent's team, just kind of educate me on what was going on with the gear and all this kind of stuff. And as you know, with this type of a series, the mecha and the gear is a big part of it. And so you guys really shared a lot of concept art with me, and that was very cool. And I thought that, now that we're starting to show visuals from the art and all that kind of stuff, there's no sense in sitting on this stuff. So I thought maybe we could share some of that concept art with the fans that show up for this show. I shared the link over there on the Discord, the Land&SEA Discord. So hopefully some of those guys will be able to pop in and join us, because this is. Let me just be honest. If I was a fan of this kind of stuff, just being able to look at this art is, one of the big parts of that. I was sharing before we went live, when I was a kid, look at those BattleTech books, right? Those source books with the big painted covers. That was a nice thing about a role-playing game book is this big, right? It's a lot bigger than, say, just a novel. And so you can really look at that artwork. It's kind of like an album versus a CD, right? The album art was way more important on a record than it was a CD because it was just so much bigger. So anyway, so I thought we could flip through some of this stuff. And one of the things that I was talking about, like when I thought we were live, was we were talking about the thing you shared the other day on Twitter, X, and it was the concept art for the Sea Wolf. Now let's see who we got. Oh yeah, perfect timing. And we have a chair stream from Brent's house. Anyway, so what we've got here is the concept sheet for this is the version 1 for the Sea Wolf. You shared version 2, and the reason I wanted to share this one was because there's a lot of in the design phase. There's a lot of stuff that you kind of go through. What do we like here? And so this just shows you 2 different examples of how Doug approached the design on these mechs. And Brent, we're going through concept art here today. I wanted to, we've been sharing, from time to time pieces of concept art. And I thought it was time for us to kind of put some of that in front of the fans and actually talk about it. So real quick, just from when you get something from an artist, right? You've described things, you've shown them other concepts that it's like what I need is something like this but different, right? So what's your kind of, Brent, what's your kind of thought process when Doug brings you something like this and says, okay, here's two kind of ways we could go with this?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it usually starts off with, here was the specs that we had come up with from a creative direction design, but usually there's no pictures with that.
Yeah.
So here's an explanation. And honestly, words don't do a great job of conveying a picture. So it's always important to find an artist who is naturally really, really skilled and then give them enough rope to really run, but not so much that it gets in their way. So this was a perfect example of, having a really, really quality artist that we could just give a direction to and say, go. And so as he was going, like this, I believe these were the first incarnations that came back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what you can see for anybody viewing from home, Doug is exploring the shapes. What shapes, every different rig, you want to have unique shapes. You want them to be instantly identifiable for a variety of reasons, and you never want them to be clunky or corny. So he was like, okay, what if we do round shapes on the shoulders, straight shapes, slab side items on the legs, nuances like that. And it's funny how often the direction from this stage will dramatically change from design to design. So like this one, we're like, what, we want to double down on all the rounded shapes. Go ahead and all those squared off flat-sided items. Let's go ahead and put bulges on those. And yet the next one, maybe we want to stay completely away from all the curves, and we want to go, triple down on all the slab-sided flat edges. You just case by case. And so this was a case of, Doug really ran and gave us some details, and we were able to say, like this, don't like that, adjust this, and go.
So. Well, so just to kind of take this, so we were just looking at the first version of that. This is the art that you shared. This is the version 2. So as you can tell, he went with some of those less cluttered designs there in the front. Almost like with the canopy, kind of a combination of smooth and that faceted type of look that you have there. One of the things that this is a, we were talking before the stream about, land versus water mechs, at the Ashers, right? So like, what is it? The Trident is a purpose-built underwater Asher that we see.
Yeah, totally aquatic.
Right. Whereas this is something that was maybe designed for the land, but with some kind of
amphibious influence.
It's shallow water operations. So if you're Navy SEALs driving off the coast, you can drop these things in the water and they can walk ashore. Yeah. Hopefully. I think Scott's frozen again, watcher.
Either that or he's holding really still.
All right.
Good. This leaves me in charge.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's up to you. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the images. Oh, he's coming back. There he is.
Yeah. I bear with me, guys. I'm my connection this morning for whatever reason is being schizophrenic. So fair warning. So anyway, that's just one example of some and now that is a Gen 3 Asher.
Yeah, one of the additional items with that, obviously we had him add some curves, but we also had some far more complex little details to it, and that was to reinforce the fact that this was a Gen 3 design. Whereas if you compare that to the Honey Badger's a Gen 2, if I remember correctly. And that's why you'll see a lot more straight edges, straight lines, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got some of the design stuff these are the early designs that you guys sent me to kind of familiarize me. So this is the Rhino. Right. With Gen 2, and it seems like they're more kind of deliberately beefy because they're building up from the Gen 1s, and
he froze again. That's
funny. Well, the Gen 1s are. I'll go without him. Gen 1 is power armor. Yeah. Okay, it is. If you think of Ripley in Aliens when she's in the loader. It's kind of an armored version of that in many respects. You strap yourself into a Gen 1 suit. And so your knee is where the knee of the rig is. Your foot is in the foot. Your hands and arms are in the arms. When you get to Gen 2, you're dealing with a cockpit configuration. So we have these sleeves that you slide your legs into and you slide your arms into. And your movement, your walking movement will actually move the Asher. It translates your motion, which is significantly less, but you are having to exert a lot of physical energy to be able to move the rig. But it puts you in a greater deal of control, especially with the sleeves which you put your arms in. Now you can literally lift a weapon up and aim it, right off your cockpit. Mm-hmm. And it operates that way. So, I mean, it's in the Gen 3 suits, you're getting much more sophisticated, better weapon systems, things along those lines. I mean, when we did the Seawolf, we put in a laser shotgun. And Brett and I had a discussion about that. And I said, look, Navy SEALs, these guys are going on a breach. And let's not use explosives to breach. Let's use a laser burst that actually is a multi-prism laser that fires out in short range, but a wider spread to literally melt a hole to get at. You know, and it was like, oh, that'd be cool. Imagine what that would be like when you stick it up against a crab's head, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, Brent, one of the things that you told me early on when we were talking about design, because for a guy like me, it's a little harder because I can't go like blank sheet into like, okay, I just want to make something that looks cool. I'm stuck in the world of real world weapons and the things that like I know from all my years in the military. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, for instance, when I saw this, I was like, why would you want to have a triangular rocket, right? And you literally this was the thing that kind of got me in the right mindset, right? It's like, you're like, oh, it just looks cool, you know? It looks cool. And I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, you know, it's like if you throw out like the whole, you know, round versus any other shape being more efficient or whatever, then it becomes like, okay, well, then that opens up, you know, and it's like our guns, right? You know, you don't have to explain how you manufacture these guns or what every little greeble is on the detailing, right? You just have to make it look cool. It's kind of like the aliens, the Marines guns from Aliens, you know, the pulse rifles.
Yeah.
You know, those things looked damn cool. They didn't have to be like, okay, so they say they had 99 rounds. Well, how do you get 99 rounds in that small little magazine? Well, you don't have to explain that, right?
Don't overthink it.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but you know what, Scott? You brought up a great point, and it was something Brett and I had brought with us from BattleTech. Well, it's something that doesn't exist in BattleTech that we insisted on, which is, you know, you can't have 400 missiles in one of these things. You know, or missiles that are stored on the left-hand side that somehow magically traverse over to the right-hand side and stuff. You know, BattleTech, when you start doing cutaways of those mechs, they can't possibly hold the amount of ammo that they do. It's literally being brought in from another dimension. And it's ridiculous. So ours is more based on soundness when it comes to these things. When you look at those missiles that you showed too, a lot of our inspiration were drones more than missiles.
Yeah.
So if you look at those are very much like a propelled drone, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that, and I do some talking about this in one of the books where we talk about how they operate differently, you know, because they aren't tied into the tracking system in the cockpit. They have their own laser tracking system in the warhead. So they're doing a lot. It's very sophisticated. It's more of a crossover between a rocket and a drone than anything else. And so our inspirations were drawn from some of the, you know,
sort of real world stuff. Yeah. Well, so that the irony is that that's one of the things that I've thought about bringing into my stories, you know, maybe in later chapters is, you know, you've seen these drones, these suicide drones that the Ukrainians are using. And those things are, you know, Watcher here is a drone guy. I mean, these things are really easy to make. And I can imagine, you know, 18 years from now, 16 years from now, when this a war starts, they're only going to be easier to make.
Well, but here's what happened. And here's why you don't see a lot of drones in the novels. Okay. Just so you understand.
Yeah.
You're seeing more ground drones. And that was during the Russia-Bravo War. Russia learned from Ukraine all about drones. And so they built countermeasures. And the U.S. learned that the Russians were building countermeasures. So they built countermeasures. So in the first week or two of the war, drones get used, but then they get knocked out. And they're easy to build, but there's also becoming very easy to knock out with sonic weapons, with electrical discharge weapons.
Yeah, they're fragile.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a unique element that we're encountering because, you know, obviously all of the human forces would have built in the countermeasures and stuff, but none of the humans really have a grasp on how are the aliens detecting these? How are they tracking them? How are they? They still do not understand the alien technology at all. They don't have a grasp of just how sensitive they can be to things like electricity.
Right.
So, that has a big impact. And it was funny because on a lot of the stuff, like the whole, it just looks cool. A big part of that is like, we wanted certain elements to be very signature to Land and Sea.
Yeah.
So that if you saw the image and you had no context whatsoever, you just saw the image out in the world, you're like, you know what, that looks like a Land and Sea image because it's got this, or this. It's got something that I identify.
Right.
And so the triangular missile tubes they came out kind of like an accident in a quick sketch from the original designer. And we're like, you know what, I absolutely love that. Just keep that, double down on that. That's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, then you guys should say that they make more sense from a logistics standpoint because you can stack more of them, whereas round shapes have
sure. So
space in between them. And,
absolutely, you can always see. That's the thing about a writer, and Blaine will back me up on this one. Is you can give a writer any kind of dumb thing, right? Like a world building thing. Hey, we did this, so you now have to build this, and a writer basically has to creatively. It's like the old no prizes, right? It's like with the Marvel comics, you don't point out errors, you point something out that's inconsistent, and then you as a fan explain how it becomes consistent. And I think this is exactly right. And that
the fact we call them law rockets, I had somebody at Wargate going, you're tapping into Vietnam era terminology. Call them something else. And there's actually a line in Splashdown where they said some idiot at the Pentagon went with law rocket.
Yeah.
That totally,
and that feels legit.
The irony is that we brought those law rockets back in the Iraq Afghanistan wars because they were smaller and especially in Afghanistan you could pack a lot more of those than the AT-4, which was the current version. But anyway, that's a little
but
it's recent military
like
history nerdism.
It's fun poking fun at the Pentagon constantly too.
Well, anyway, so I wanted to kind of, we were looking at the design language, right, of like Gen 2, Gen 3. And so this is another Gen 2. This is very slab-sided, very beefy, not what you'd call elegant, very practical.
Well, this one's a great example of something that you asked about earlier. The Gen 1s look significantly different than this. And a big part of that wasn't just that they armored them better. Is that the Gen 2s were self-contained, so they had heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Right.
Which is why, in Blaine's story that's in the upcoming issue of Anvil that talks about the first time a lion steps on the battlefield, it walks out, it walks through the trees, and that starts unloading, and the other side of the battlefield is like, what is that? Like, that's not what we're used to, because they're used to seeing open spaces and stuff, and this was completely self-contained.
Well, the irony is that derivations from this Generation 2 make a whole lot of sense in, say, underwater and even deep water with pressurized capsules for the pilots and whatnot. And we haven't seen this yet, and I'm sure it's probably on both of your.
There he goes again.
Where he freezes, that's a lot of fun.
The aliens got him.
The aliens got him. That's what it was. They silenced him.
It always happens that way.
Yeah. How you doing, Watcher?
Hey, while he's locked up, Brent, why don't we show him what a Gen 1 suits look like?
Yeah.
Do it. You got the picture? You want to throw it up?
Oh, yeah. Let me pull it up.
You guys ready for the big reveal?
And by the way, this is final.
Oh, yeah.
No takesies backseat.
No takesies backseat.
No takesy backsies. These went to the publisher. Did it pop up?
There it is. Okay.
So this is cover of Cyclones of Chaos final. And these are Gen 1 suits that have been brought in and incorporated with some Gen 3 tech. So these are Eagle S's. Is their designation. The one you see in the forefront, if you take a real close look, is Natalia Falto. And the guy in the back, hopefully you guys would recognize, Adam Kane.
Yeah, boy.
And that is, by the way, a big ass rifle.
That is big. That is not what the Eagle was originally armed with. That is something.
Well, they actually trained firing the rifles separate before they trained in the rigs.
Yeah.
And the rifle is a liquid gas rifle, which one of our fans suggested. And I ended up pulling up the DARPA papers on why they canceled the project. And some of the stuff, and it was like, oh, some of these problems are actually resolvable. So, I mean, this is a really cool way to kill foxes or any other alien.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that this weapon finally allowed the humans to take out specific enemies at range that the aliens couldn't hit them back. Like this was from far enough away they could pop them, and that was pretty cool. I also love the idea that this was a gun that was too big; they couldn't put it on anything until they like, well, what if we strap it to an Asher rig? Like, oh, okay, now that suddenly becomes totally viable.
Yeah, we do have scenes with these guys running around with these guns, though, and it's going to be fun without the suits. So it's always going to be entertaining. You could just picture those poor guys lugging it.
Oh, yeah.
But, those are Gen 1 suits, so you make that transition from Gen 1 to Gen 3, which is just, it's cool. You were getting cooler designs each time. Brent got the Bronco the other day. And it looks cool. It's got a great look to it. It's just a cool rig.
I admit I'm still kind of geeking out about that one.
And, we take a lot of time. I was going to show. We take a lot of time to take a look at all the aspects of this. So let me share this out just so that Scott misses out on a whole bunch of stuff.
Maximum Scott miss out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is what you get when you got Kim Jong-un doing your internet.
Oh.
So, like these are some of the early sketches we had done early on for just the personal armor, the STG, standard tactical gear. And literally it's like, how did the pieces attach on the body? And things along those lines. So, I mean, this is the level of detail that we go into that gets reflected in the miniatures that we've got.
I don't see it yet. Washer, can you post it up or is it coming?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Perfect example. And TK did such a good job on these.
So, can you see it, guys?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, see it and layers. Want it.
Well, it's a thing. It's, people think it's all, and this is what Brent's brought to the table. He's found some great guys to work with that get us stuff like this. It's also us knowing what we want, like we're going to need this stuff down the road. So for us, it's a lot of fun just to do it too. And we've done this with a lot of stuff that we have. Oh, don't try to come back in, Scott. We've
missed so much stuff, dude.
I've been watching on Twitter, so.
Oh, okay. But we've done some stuff too that I don't know if anybody's ever seen some of this stuff. That it only took me a second because I had it up. But like when we went through some of the early designs of just our weapon systems, we didn't just go through and say, give me a gun. We wanted a gun that actually had components. Yeah. So this is early design for the AR.
Oh, yeah. I love this stuff. This was fun.
And I mean, we spent a lot of time going over this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is exactly what I wanted to share with everybody. The guns, the gear, all this stuff is so great. Hunch mentioned it in the chat a while back, where he said that the technical manuals are the things that so many people just love to pour over. I mean, let's be honest. How many people bought technical manuals for BattleTech but never actually played a game for it? I'm sure that number is not zero. It is some number of people out there who just kind of get more into the detail of the lore than they do the actual, maybe the gameplay piece. So we each have our thing that we're all into.
All right. Well, we got. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I loved how many people they would read the source book one time, but they'd read the technical. They'd have the technical manual in their bathroom. And they'd be reading it every day for like a year. I mean, constantly going over those details. Yeah, our fans love tech stuff. It's awesome.
We got 2 super chats come in, mostly containing questions. Hunch the Dirty Roofer says, for $5, says, "Wait, a gun bigger than a person should be able to carry? That is that a person should be able to carry? That's a one shot. Marines immediately fall in love and find a way to everyday carry." Yeah. And then Alpha Omega says, 2 questions. What do the foot sloggers look like, and can I perform a Highland burial in an Asher? Giant mechs look smoosh.
I'm trying to remember the Highlander burial. Was that where a death from above shot? Brent?
I thought it was the body out on the floating thing. You shoot it and it.
Oh, that's the Vikings.
That's like.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't remember the Highlander burial shot. I didn't use that in my books, I don't think.
Yeah, we need more details to properly answer that.
I'm pretty sure he means
if
I'm remembering the story of my my Highland, I think he might mean hey, can you force the core to go self-destruct mode instead of letting him take you out? That would be more of a Highlander thing.
We don't play with the Mike Stackpole nuclear fusion reactor blowing up thing. Our guys aren't running on nukes.
Well,
no. Apparently, Alpha Omega says it is. Alpha Omega says it is when you cockpit crush somebody by jumping on top of them.
Okay.
We actually had our first one of those in a book that hasn't come out yet. But yes, I did do that. But it's not what you think because we don't have jump jets. So it's more a matter of getting on a roof and waiting till someone's passing under you and then jumping down on them.
The old cougar method.
Yeah. And by the way, it completely works. And it's also very painful because a rig is, 900 pounds plus the soldier. It leaves a mark. We just don't call it death from above because I don't want a cease and desist letter.
That's an actual thing that we'll call it. Hey,
look who joined us.
We had 2 Scots there. I had to resolve the timeline. Sorry about that.
We don't want a paradox.
Nice. Can't break the continuum.
Yes.
It's fun stuff like that people enjoy. And I will tell you, Brett, and I'm going to show what I know watchers been wanting to see this. So you guys, we do have a coffee mug out there for Adam Kane, and Kane has he always had his wife
nose art.
Yeah, he had his wife painted on the nose. So this is what's on the coffee mug. It's up on Wargate's website. So let me share the screen. This is going to be a 2-parter in many ways. So this was because we wanted to have World War II nose art on a lot of the rigs. We think that is something pilots do, and it's very distinct. So this was the final product for this. Let me know when you guys can see it.
Have we? Oh, we can. Yeah. Have we mentioned that as any true enlisted man does at least some point, Adam married a stripper. So. Well,
we never said she was. I don't think we said she was a stripper.
No, she's not a stripper. She just is a buxom,
nice person. Now,
okay.
Now, to tell you how this started. So we had we had what I'll call the tits discussion, which is how much of your wife's breast would you have visible?
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
So
it's helpful to note. I've had a long time working relationship. One of the first artists that I ever hired back when I was with Catalyst is an amazing illustrator by the name of Echo Chernick. She is brilliant, and she just happens to be very, very well known. I don't want to call it pinup artwork because it's not quite right. It's a very sexualized noir type of art style, Art Nouveau style, and she's fantastic at it. So when we knew we wanted like a full on nose art World War II type of vibe on this one, I reached out to her and she's like, "Oh yeah," and she always goes way further down the rabbit hole than I ever would. I'm like, okay, she's not a stripper. She's like, really, this is a guy's wife, and what would she be wearing? And ultimately, we ended up making the bikini much larger. in line with what bikinis were at the time of the World War II planes and stuff. But trying to figure out how to balance all that, there was a whole lot of back and forth. And
yeah. Well, I was like,
it's
his wife. He's not going to want to show her nipples. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So yeah, she's fantastic. Highly recommend Echo Training.
Oh, it was fun though. We do. It's not that we're politically correct by any stretch, but we do want to be able to have kids join the game at some point.
Yeah.
Good move.
Yeah. She wanted.
And we
to show
lost
a lot more
Scott. Scott got to miss out on the breasts.
Minis and Dumbbell is asking, can I get that artist's info? Yes.
Yeah.
You
Honestly, just Google Echo Turnick or Google Echo X, like the letter X, and she'll come up. She's fantastic. She's honestly been one of the most noteworthy Shadowrun artists for well over a decade. She's just amazing. So highly recommend her.
Well,
she loves private commissions. She takes them all the time.
I don't know about that, Alpha Omega. I understand that many nose arts were rejected, but I also understand that many crews ran nose arts that were rejected.
Yes.
Well, and honestly, a lot of them were way more risque than what this was. Like,
yes. There were a lot of full nudes, like a lot.
There's a few lines I don't want to. Well, I shouldn't say it. There's a few lines that we just aren't going to cross.
It has to feel right for the character. Like this was Kane's wife, and ultimately, I think if you want your wife on your nose art, then you get your wife on your nose art. I like, hey, that's your wife, and if she happens to be, buxom and bouncy, then cool. If she's, overweight or super skinny or super tall or super, hey, go ahead, it's your wife, man. That's the thing. Run with it.
There's kind of a cool comment. There's kind of a cool comment here I want to highlight because it's relevant to me. Someone says, Daniel Gladstone says, I'd like to be able to introduce my kids to the LAND&SEA universe, so they're still a little young for the current content. I don't know if this was intentional or unintentional, but Blaine did a really interesting and masterful thing in Scene 1, Book 1, and that is that if you can read Scene 1, Book 1, you can handle the rest of the series. If you cannot handle Scene 1, Book 1, that's okay. Go find yourself a good Nancy Drew novel or something that you can really chew into and sit down and enjoy. I don't mean that insultingly, by the way. Nancy Drew's great.
No, I think that's
I think Daniel raises a good point, and we have. I was one of the first people that used the word fuck in a BattleTech novel, and I had to have a meeting with the editor to discuss the use of the word fuck and whether it would still be in use in the 32nd century, which I argued successfully it would.
Oh, absolutely.
But we just had never used it before in BattleTech, and there was a lot of concern about it. And he was like, well, we want 16-year-old kids reading this book. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure 16-year-old kids have heard that word. I mean,
do you want to know what my vocabulary consisted of when I was 16?
I use it sparingly, but it does get used because it's going to be used 20 years from now, I assure you, which is when Land&SEA is set. And that's part of the universe building is you have to have discussions about what is the language, what is the phraseology that's used, things along those lines, and it works. It's close enough to real life that there's nothing jarring about the technology. Is it a series for kids? I don't think so. I just don't think that's the audience for this. If I were to classify the audience for this, it's somebody who's like 18 to 65 who likes military sci-fi. That's the audience for this. I don't know if I'd be letting a 14-year-old kid read even, Starship Troopers. There's a lot of concepts there that are pretty heady stuff.
Yeah.
Although, if you want your kids to really be educated, it's a great place to start. So
anything by Heinlein, basically. I'm gonna make that an auto endorse. If Heinlein wrote it, you should read it. It's good. Although if you're gonna pick up for kids, I think The Family Stone is probably the where you want to sneak in there.
Yeah, and I know people have tried to do military sci-fi for kids, and it's usually an abysmal failure. The stuff I've read It's just it doesn't work. And
well, no shade whatsoever thrown at the 40K children's novels. None at all.
Yeah.
There's been a few series that have popped up over the years, and I've tried to get into them, and I'm like, you end up having children doing war crimes and seeing stuff they shouldn't be involved with. And I just think that the concept of young adult and military sci-fi are highly incompatible. But
although I'm really happy I read Ender's Game as a young man.
Well, see, that actually is a young adult.
Yeah, that's about a young adult. That's
a totally young adult class.
Oh, see, story. I see. So children. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I see exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. No, not any children's books for that category.
Well, the irony is that, YA literature versus telling a story about a young adult, or a teen or something like that those are two completely separate things, right? And let's I look back at the original Gundam series, right? So, the original Gundam series starred basically a high school teenager whose dad was the guy who invented Gundam. So, there was at least some connection there for
Alpha Omega says Gundam enters chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. And but the whole point is that kind of started that teen, military action trope, right? Where now in Japanese literature, all of the people are teenagers, right? That are good in mechs. But in this world, that's not the case. It's a little more gritty, and kids are not prepared for, these types of things. So
that brings up a good point that I'd love to see. Like, what are the Japanese doing, and how far Japanese and Koreans doing, and how far has the ability to telecommute what a mech is doing come? Because I know that we've talked about the Japanese having.
Do you mean in Land&SEA?
Yeah, in Land&SEA. Okay, yeah. Because it seems like, actually, interestingly, as professional RTS games have taught us, it is actually people in between roughly 14 to 16 years old who have the absolute peak of reaction. They just might not necessarily have the emotional maturity.
No.
Well, see, and that's the kind of thing that makes the RTS easy to master for, say, a 15-year-old. But that same 15-year-old, if he has any inclination that those are real targets and real people every time that they're killing them, they will either go psychopathic on you, or they will just go catatonic.
Well, it's funny because I could literally just name multiple. Actually, I could name the same anime for both of those, actually. So Evangelion, but there we go.
Well, somebody posted up there, they're like, well, what about these characters in Red Badge of Courage and stuff who were kids? And I'm like, we're not talking about writing about kids. We do that.
Yeah.
We have Cassidy Chen. She's a 15-year-old girl who is thrust into the war, and it dramatically alters.
You're talking about writing for kids, which is
we're talking about the young adult genre,
right?
And that's a big difference. I would say that Red Badge of Courage is not a young adult child. It's not written for young adults. It's written for adults.
Yeah.
And it does involve young characters. And I think people have a hard time parsing that. It's, we did do Cassidy Chen very deliberately. We wanted to show the war through the eyes of the most innocent thing on the planet, which is a young girl who turns into a killer.
Yeah.
And the war changes her, and it does it quickly, and it does it violently. And you wanted to capture that. And some of that was, we had discussions about Carl from Walking Dead, which
definitely
it was, what's the journey that the kid goes on when he changes completely into something more vicious and violent. And that's part of what we're trying to cover. And we cover that. We write about kids. It's just, let's be more realistic about, the whole young adult genre. I just think is not a good place for military sci-fi. Right?
In fact, if you think about like the best example I can think of is the movie Red Dawn. It was entirely about teens. But the truth is, that was really a movie for 18 and above.
Oh, yeah. What?
Yeah, like they had to deal with very real, very adult, very, very harsh issues. And we all know that in warfare around the world, in the real world, all the time, women and children are confronted with warfare in very real ways. But that doesn't mean that it's responsible for us to mishandle how those are portrayed within hours, because this is meant to be an escapism thing. This is like, there should be some assumption of a safe zone for what we do. And I think Watcher did a good job of observing that opening scene. If you can get through the opening scene, you're old enough.
Yeah.
If that opening scene gives you nightmares, you're not. And that's good. Like that's okay. You'll
get
there.
Brent, you've given me a transition here. This is, this is why it was so frustrating doing this for my phone, because I want to share this artwork, right? Speaking of nightmares, right? In this world, one of the things that people haven't seen nearly as much, and we focused on this when we launched the comic, was we were showing that the merman, coming out, right? So one of the things
right off the Asher.
Exactly. One of the things that I wanted to show the people are some of these. If you don't mind, of course, and since I got the boss here, I want to show some of the concepts for the fish, if you don't mind here.
You can show the boss, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's actually the first one that I've got here. Let me share screen. Fish concept. So here's the first one I've got. So this is our boss, right?
Early concept work, yeah.
Early concept. So I mean, but you see how they are Asher in size, but much more. It's that biomechanical. It's that kind of something, very powerful, very there's muscles, but then this is also something that's designed to go down, thousands of feet in the water. So there is some, resilience, some bulk, some armor to it.
And there's that nuance of it looks humanoid, but it's wrong. There's
right.
too many joints in there. It doesn't look
right.
right.
And you've got that diagram here with all the kind of bizarre joints and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was, I like the aesthetic that you've come, and there was a tongue-in-cheek comment. I think it was Cervix Hammer up here, but it's actually a good question to kind of pivot into this. Where is that? Here we go. Why did you choose crabs as the enemy? So, I mean, and this kind of goes to, I could see the boss as being more of a, this is one of the designs that they brought with them, like a genetic design that they brought with them. Whereas the crab could very well be an adaptation of something they found on the floor of the ocean.
I love that that's what you're thinking. It's the exact opposite.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So and this one's actually just a funny story. I don't care if it's out there or not. That old joke of like the origin of the concept for Land&SEA was spurned out of like insomnia and just watching like History Channel at 2:00 in the morning. And there was one. I was watching it, and this is probably 2010, 2011, and they were talking about how there was a pretty significant period of time way, way back where life was very young on this planet, where the apex species on the planet globally was waterborne scorpions that were 12 feet long. And I'm like, that stuck with me. I'm like, if your apex predator on the planet is 12-foot long aquatic scorpions, how dramatically, if things did not cause cataclysmic extinction level events, what would have happened to that planet if it had continued on through all of another 100 million years worth of evolution? Where would that end up? And so that's the origin of the crabs.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So they're actually, they're more like the natives.
They are 100%. They were never on Earth. That was one of the few species that was brought with them.
So if you're giving me a bipedal guy like the boss here, that makes me think that they shanghaied some folks and
they did significantly do that, because the crab can't navigate inside a structure, can't use doorknobs, can't do any of the things that a human does. But a boss can go wherever an Asher goes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the aliens legitimately had never encountered a bipedal species until they landed on Earth and encountered humans.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I think it's book 4 where you talk about the first significant land operation by the fish, where they, go after the ELF arrays. So
book
that
3, yeah.
book 3, yeah. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, clearly they realized they weren't as efficient on land, and so they went for a kind of a brute force approach, to that with the those turtle deals or whatever they were. Or I can't remember whether they were mollusks or turtles. I can't remember exactly what
they launched ships. They launched ships full of troops. They absolutely.
Right, and so that was another thing. That was the first kind of indication that the air is not our safe space, or our alone, zone alone. Now that being said, I think flying 30,000 feet overhead, you're fairly safe, but there's no guarantees. And the other thing too is the way war works is as a threat is presented to you or a dilemma is presented to you, then you come up with some sort of, all right, well, there's a thing up there 30,000 feet and I have nothing that can shoot there. So now I got to figure something out that can go after that thing up there at 30,000 feet. And then it just becomes trial and error until you're able to counter that threat, right?
Yeah. Blaine, I am book 6.
I am positively giddy for them to read book 7.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Well, book 6.
7.
Oh, 7. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I got too many books.
Came out long ago, dude. That's old news.
No, book 7 has an alien response to Ariel.
I can't. You're so close.
Speaking of aliens, so another thing that pops up in book 3 that I'd like to show some of the early concept art on are these guys, the foxes, right? These are
they're starting in even book 1.
Book 1 they show up.
Well, yeah, I just the foxes really kind of they were there, but I didn't clue in as to why they were important. So, real quick, the fox, what's its role in the battlefield that we've seen in the books thus far?
Humankind is still trying to figure that out. In this military theater, humans are observing the organizations going, and the truth is these crazy little creatures seem to be the hub for intelligence. This is their communication system. For relaying information from
this is recon troops.
Yeah.
But with that said, they don't fit any model that like what we think of as recon troops or how recon troops would operate. These guys do not fit that model. They don't seem that way. One thing that's really fun about these sketches, by the way, I love that you're throwing out the early concept sketches. This is really cool. When I assigned this to our artist who was bringing these things to life, one of the most difficult things we did is that none of these species look only one way. Yeah, they look very varied depending on the genetic source material that they're being created from. And so it's clear that they're all whoever's creating these undersea is using the same basic template format, but they all come out looking different and weird and unique. And we're only beginning to understand the nuances of that as we walk into season 2. So
very cool. Now this next one, I can't remember what this one's called. You have to. Is this more Fox concepts?
These are frogs.
Frogs. Okay. Yeah. This is one it doesn't say on the thing here, so I was always just kind of like, well, what these are. So these are with and without tails. Now, so how much of the design work survived from this phase into where we are now, as far as the continuity goes?
Yeah, a great deal of it. Yeah, I would say 95%. Ultimately, we made the design choice that the frogs would not have tails, and the Urukai frogs will retain their tails. And the reason is because of the genetic source material.
Well, one of the things too, I mean, you have a very kind of you've intimated a hive structure, some sort of a kind of a connection, some sort of, to like a network that connects all these things together. that is different than, say, just like an autonomous individual. When some of these, like when a fox is alone and unafraid, right? What happens to this guy?
Okay, so that's a great question, because it's humans don't know how to interpret what they're seeing. They're just observing behavior. Here behind the scenes, with nobody watching out in the real world, we can talk a little bit about the nuance. But anytime you look at wild animals, you can see there are some species like the big cats where they are happy being solo. They do not want to be around other big cats. They operate entirely on the way that their instincts and their primal urges cause them to behave. Whereas you have frogs where they're completely fine being in a big giant mob and climbing all over each other. You have all these other species all behaving very unique as individual species. It's important to remember all of those species, that's technically genetic programming.
Yeah.
They're genetically programmed to feel that way, to behave in that manner. And so they are not, oh, my evil overlords want me to behave this way. They are, this is the way I want to be.
Like a default setting.
Yeah, this is just who they are, but they've been crafted that way. These are engineered organisms.
Yeah. I just think it'll be interesting because, not all the plans of the fish are going to go as expected. You're going to have some stragglers. You're going to have some left behinds. Are some of these so benign that theoretically, when given none of it's a kind of, when it's by itself, could it essentially start just being around humans and almost turn it into a pet,
We actually began to see some of that. I'll throw it out. You may have missed it, but in book 4, the one that was all the little stories, it started right off with the ship running into a reef in the middle of the ocean where there's not supposed to be a reef.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are engineered coral.
Yeah.
They got loose and they just started building structures where there weren't supposed to be any structures. There's no colony there, but they're suddenly building a structure that goes all the way to the surface of the water. You're like, okay, now wait a minute, what do I do with that? And that's an example of, just like, Ian said in Jurassic Park, life will find a way. You can try to contain it, but at some point it's going to break out and do something you hadn't intended.
These are essentially invasive species is what you're saying.
Yeah, in some respects they are. And sometimes it's done deliberately. So you could look at that coral thing, and I had this discussion with a fan not too long ago. It could be that they're trying to manipulate the flow of the jet stream.
Yeah.
So if you raise up coral reefs that block the flow of the jet stream and alter the flow of the jet stream, you could actually control the weather on the planet.
Yeah, you could dramatically adjust all kinds of things, from the way food flows in the ocean, massive current effects with regard to temperature. Like, there's so many things that are involved there. With regard to the frogs, I will throw this one out in particular. In every way, shape, and form, the frogs are a bioweapon. And the frogs are a bioweapon on a truly for the aliens, this is a weapon of mass destruction. Anybody that knows anything about the invasion of cane toads in the country of Australia, they do not know how to contain. There is no stopping this. They can't. This is a biblical plague that they have. They can see it coming, and they cannot come up with a way to stop this. These guys are a bioengineered plague.
The other part of it is it also may be a form of terraforming, on a very biological kind of scale. So
we don't know, because we try to always interpret them based on what we think and what we perceive, but that doesn't work. If you're dealing with an alien species, it just doesn't work. And I know every sci-fi movie says, oh, well, we can figure it out. No. We can't even figure out really how to talk to dolphins. We can train a dolphin or a gorilla to perform an act that simulates communication that we understand, but we can't actually talk to the dolphin.
We don't understand their language. We don't have enough context.
Exactly right. I mean, no matter how smart we are, probably AI will figure it out before we do. Which is kind of sad.
Okay, you're not far wrong. You could be seeing a little of that coming up.
Well, okay, so as long as we're peeling it back, and obviously it's as much as you gentlemen want to, so feel free to just be like, hey, Watcher, that's too much, we're not going to answer. But I've been curious, whatever the parent species is, do they view these as like participant species and like equal partners in a civilization, or are these more like working dogs that they're using to?
I don't think the kids in the world want to know what Santa's going to bring them for Christmas.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't think
Yep.
you
All
actually
right.
want an answer to that. I think trying to figure that out is going to be an important part of the experience of going through the next 3 seasons of Land and Sea, as we really try to wrap our head around the fact that there is no universal kill button. There's no one place we can throw a missile down a pipe and it's going to blow up the Death Star.
If nothing else, you've given me a happy answer, which is we're exploring that, which I'm happy about. So
yeah,
I know the answer.
the goal here isn't to rush through all of this. It's to really give readers an actual alien invasion.
Yeah.
And not the Hollywood version, not the TV version. It's not Fallen Skies or anything. This is how this might play out, and it's not a pretty thing, and it's ugly on all sides.
One of the things that Blaine and I kind of wrapped our head around right at the beginning, like we both had to make each other agree to this, is like we're not trying to get this to go into a predetermined ending. There's not a direction we're not trying to tell some eco story or anything. Like no, this needs to be where the story takes it, like where we really legitimately feel this goes, and it has to feel authentic for both sides of this. And right now, a big part of the experience of going through Land and Sea is trying to figure out what in the world is going on with these species and why they're doing what they're doing. We don't know. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the way you guys have kind of come to this, and so this. I think we got a couple more here. This is another one that was absolutely terrifying in that first novel when these things started, just absolutely wreaking havoc on the beaches. I mean, talk about a weapon of mass destruction. These things were just absolutely gnarly.
Goblins.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys reading this. Like, I got it so much earlier than the rest of the fan base. But the funnest thing for me about these goblins, this is just a slightly larger version of things that actually exist on Earth right now.
Yeah.
Like, people get attacked by sand fleas. Like there was a teen while Blaine was writing this, there was a teen in Australia that got attacked. His feet got ravaged. He just thought he was itching. So he reaches down to scratch and looks down and there's just blood all around the water from him. And by the time they got him into the emergency room, they're like, holy, this kid had thousands of holes in his feet that these things had chewed their way through.
Paris Island Marines unavailable for comment.
Yeah, we didn't have to push the envelope far on these guys, but I loved that what ultimately made thousands of people run in terror is a creature that's smaller than a golf, that's a golf ball or a tennis ball.
Right. Well, right. And that's actually much more terrifying for somebody like me. It's like, I can shoot at something big, but it's something like this is hard to shoot at, right? I mean, you can shoot at the whole mass of them and you're going to get some, but you have to get 99% of them in order to be successful.
Yeah, the joke for a while was like the best weapon on the battlefield would be a tennis racket.
Well, tennis racket or a flamethrower with something like this.
Oh yeah. They catch on fire, they bounce around and catch everything else on fire.
Exactly right. Hunch the Dirty Roofer for $5 says, Brent, you just made the Black Templar part of my soul smile. You're saying suffer not the crab, not the box, or the fox. Purge the Xenos.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Very good. Very good. Yes. And of course, Shifty's correct. Flamethrowers are key, as they are. A couple more here. We'll just kind of go through these quickly just to kind of, just for the point of completion. Is now we've seen some of these. This is another one that shows up in book 3.
Oh, this is a big sneak peek. Yeah. Revealing these guys.
Well, the interesting thing is I think that this one was, the way you described it in the book, Blaine, really just it felt exactly like this, right? They're kind of terrifying, and actually in a lot of ways they're more terrifying than some of the other guys.
Oh, absolutely.
But in a way, they're much more benign as far as their interactions with everybody else.
One thing with these guys, they're not like, we keep describing them as tentacles.
Yeah. They're
not like squid tentacles. They're like elephant trunks. If anybody knows about the strength, the dexterity, and the tactile feel, like elephants are so incredibly sensitive with what they can do with their trunks. and their strength to weight is astonishing. And these guys are just this massive bundle of trunks that you're like, what do you even do with this? But they're so incredibly versatile with what their forms can do.
Yeah. That was one of the things.
Like 10 feet tall. So
this kind of gets to that point. Like if, octopuses are supposed to be really smart, but it's a distributed intelligence. So what does an octopus look like that's evolved for, a billion more years or whatever, right? Yeah. And you get something like this. So I appreciated that. Of course, we've seen the merman.
By the way, go back real quick. Can you guys tell that the entire top of its head is a beak? It has a mouth that's the size of its head.
Oh, okay. I see where you're getting it. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, if it grabbed you, it could swallow your head and shoulders in one bite.
Well, that's not terrifying. Of course, speaking of terrifying, we've got the mermen. We've already seen these guys, large and in charge, in the Paradise book, and so it was. These actually are another thing that reminds me of, aquatic. Like what do they call those things? The segmented. No, the segmented shell things that are on the. That. Hold on a second.
Carapace?
Isopods.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about? An isopod?
Isopod gang, yeah. Of course.
Let me just let me. Yes.
Well, yeah. If this was like an evil Fae version of an isopod, that's exactly what it would be.
Well, this is. I mean, these things are so evil looking by themselves. They don't have to. Yeah, and that's the size of it's bigger than somebody's hand. So these things, these are like the the Roombas, the Roombas of the bottom of the sea. We've all seen the little woolly, what do you call them? Roly-polies, right?
Roly-polies.
Yeah.
These are basically giant roly-polies.
Yeah. Don't fuck with my cousin, bro.
Yeah. And by the way, this is not a horror that Brent and Blaine came up with. This is a real thing.
Yeah, that's an actual creature.
Yeah. So anyway,
real quick, because the next one down, what you're looking at right now is the early concept art. If you scroll one more down, this is the
right.
final.
Yeah, this is what we saw actually ripping off the arm of that the lion. And so this is I really like the design of this, and Doug did a great job of bringing that to life.
Oh, he did a great job. Absolutely. It's so fun because when we were just exploring all of the crustacean-y creatures that could influence this, anybody know what a mantis shrimp is?
Mantis shrimp. I think I do.
Yeah, they have a strike. It's the fastest strike in the animal kingdom. It hits as hard as a .22 caliber bullet. You can't actually keep them in fish tanks because they'll blow a hole right through the glass.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people who do keep them, but they do have to keep replacing glass for them.
Yeah.
But,
and they need that polycarbonate like armored glass essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so the whole idea of imagine if somebody started tinkering with crustaceans and got to something this big.
Yeah.
Knowing that it dramatically changes what you're looking at. And it makes you think like that massacre in book 1 on that ship. That the Coast Guard, tows in, and there's just blood splatter and gore all over the place. Like, what's going on here? You see these guys, and you suddenly, now I get it.
There's your mantis shrimp, by the way.
One of the cool things about these dudes is that there's clubbers, and then there's also guys that have the same amount of strength in their claws, but it's a spearer. They have little sharpened projectiles that they launch through things. They're not projectiles, but hands.
All right, guys. This has been awesome to kind of go through some of this art. And there's a lot of art we can go through that we haven't gone through. We could get really geeky on some of the guns. I actually maybe that would be something that we'll save for a future episode to kind of go into the weapons of the Ashers and things like this, and also the foot soldiers. I mean, as a former infantry guy, I have a vested interest in the. What the dismounts and all that kind of stuff have. So, for instance, just as a sneak peek, I can't wait to just kind of maybe pick your guys' brains for the fans. over all that goes into this, right? Because this is very cool. So we'll save this for a future thing. I know, Blaine, you had already shared this piece, but there's a deeper rabbit hole to go down there. So we'll hold that off for a future time. Real quick,
we're so close. The knives were right down there.
We got to leave them wanting something, Brent.
Yeah.
We can't give them everything today. So I just want to update everybody on where we're at with the campaign. Land&SEA Paradise. We did some work this week. I was on with Mandy Summers and Dale freaking Keown, if you can believe that, the legend himself. And I won't say anything that was discussed after we went off about potentially things that could happen in the future with him, but that would be awesome. Let me edit my currency settings here real quick so you guys can actually. And so we're sitting at $17,523 with 278 backers. After the show earlier in the week, Blaine did a post on his website. We got some more folks from that, I'm sure. So we are. And by the way, you lost your opportunity. If you didn't do it earlier, I guess 5 days ago, you lost that opportunity for the cover D. Brent, we had several takers when we reopened that up.
I'm glad people are enjoying it, and honestly, I totally geeked out when Dale Keown was talking about the cover. Like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always funny. You got to pinch yourself when you're talking to guys like that.
Yeah.
Now, guys, I'm trying to pressure Scott into doing a digital version of this as part of this. So I encourage anybody out there, because I know 3 of you have reached out to me saying, well, how come we can't get it digitally? Pester Scott about that because I don't disagree. And maybe that's a level we can add at 18,000 or something. So.
Well, yeah. So that's actually not a bad way to put it. And the key there is delivery, figuring out how we deliver that digital.
I can solve that for you.
So we'll talk about that behind the scenes, and we'll make that happen. I am not against it, but anyway. So we got at 20K, we got a bonus print. So every order gets an additional 11x17 print with their order at 20K. We are about 2,500 away. I think that's very doable between now and we got 24 days left in the campaign. So, and then let's be honest. I know we're working some things in the back channel that we don't want to promise yet that will allow us to get the word to a wider audience. So we will continue to work those things to help spread, because you guys from the guys from the Discord, the guys from Creative Juggernauts fans, you guys have shown up, right? And so now what we need to do is, there are 2 types of fans out there that want to buy this book or will buy this book. There are fans that just haven't heard about it yet. They're already Land&SEA fans, but they just haven't, and some of those are waiting for payday or whatever, or whatever the reason. They're already in. It's just a matter of them pulling the trigger. And then there are the people who this is perfect for, that they just don't know about Land&SEA. They don't know about this campaign that we're doing. So we got to find better ways to get the word out to that broader audience, and we're going to continue to do that. Hunch, one of the ways we're doing that, of course, is the Discord. And Hunch says, which is the Discord? So now, Britt, you guys, you've been interacting with those guys over on the Discord. Is that true? Am I not putting words in your mouth there? Am I?
No, you're doing good. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So what's the best way if somebody wants to jump on this?
For a week and I kind of lost track. So
I know what's the best way to jump on the Discord? I'm pretty Discord stupid about that kind of stuff.
I am too, other than there's a Land&SEA Discord. If you go to discord.com, search for Land&SEA. There's a Land&SEA Discord. You just join it. And there's some updates that go there. Another place, if you don't want to go there, We have a fan group that is literally growing every day now.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
For like the last 3 weeks, I think there's a lot of refugees from other franchises.
Who will remain nameless.
Right, who will remain nameless, but they're coming over, and that's in Facebook. And you can just go to Facebook, look up Land&SEA, and you're going to find a fan group, and that's a great way to join. I know a lot of people hate Facebook. I get it. Discord's out there, and a lot of people hate Discord too. So that only leaves us with telepathy, and I'm not into that.
So I did just jump in real quick to see what it is. The fan group is called Land, and then space the word and then space the word C plus. Like with a plus, CSEA with a plus at the end of it. Blaine, go ahead and jump in and see if that matches what you got.
Yeah,
I'm not much more savvy than you are when it comes to.
Well, yeah, I personally am not a Facebook user. That said, I'm not against it for marketing purposes, but I don't use it personally.
So I missed the Discord link. Where was the Discord link?
I don't know. I don't know how to give you a Discord. I'm actually on the Discord right now. I don't know how to.
I'll post it up in the chat.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you just go to query and type in land space the word and space.
I just posted it up on the YouTube.
Perfect.
Okay.
Now, I will say this. There's one thing that's been really, really cool. Obviously, the feedback back and forth with the fans through the Discord channel has been far livelier than on any other channel that I've seen. It's been really impressive. One of the coolest things is that once we discovered it, Eric Crew, who's our lead game designer, jumped in, and he has been actively engaging with the fans back and forth all the time. So a lot of those like game nuance and mechanic questions and stuff are being discussed there, and Eric is interacting directly with folks, which has been really, really neat.
Yeah. Speaking of Eric, I'd love to get Eric on one of these updates sometime so we could kind of talk about the game and talk about how the stories and, like the one thing that I'll be honest with you. I didn't think about this until you mentioned it, Blaine, and Brent. You mentioned it as well. When we showed that scene of that Asher getting his arm ripped off, you guys were like, okay, how do we show that? How do we model that in the game? Does that make sense?
Yes.
If it can't happen in the game, then we shouldn't have it happen in our story.
The first thing we did was go and calculate the mechanics. And that was Eric who did all the math on that. He's like, that would be able to do that, definitely.
Yeah, and it's ruined reading the comic book because everything in the comic book we have to look at and go, so is this actually possible in the universe? You're not enjoying the graphic novel nearly as much.
Well, I'm going through I'm with a fine-tooth comb. I'm going through the second half of the graphic novel before I hand it off to Doug, and I think I mentioned that to you guys, and we get some feedback from some outside folks, and that's one of the things that I'm going through on my kind of reread on it is, all right, did I do something here that might be, it might not work or whatever. So I haven't found anything yet because I think I have a pretty good understanding of what the dynamics of these fights look like. But still, it's just one of those. It's another layer of consideration that I have to give as a writer to what I put in the book. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah.
Okay, can we quick pause because you breezed right past an important thing. So, correct me, when last I checked my email, Doug said he was done with the black and white and he was going back to finish up.
No. He's done with the first 29 pages.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
That actually makes me feel
because remember we started out at 48. And then we went to 56 now because so we're at 56 pages of story. So, that's where we're at right now. So, but oddly enough, if it was a regular comic, that would be a full comic.
Oh, and then that would be
28.
Yeah,
28 pages would be a full comic. So,
standard comic is 22 pages plus some ads.
Right.
For anybody.
Anyway,
guys, so loud here.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up anyway. So appreciate you guys coming on. We're going to chit chat maybe a little after this, but I appreciate you in the chat. You guys are always holding it down. We'll get that if we can't get, if that link's not working in the chat for the Discord, we'll get that out to you guys. Or actually, you could probably just hand type it from the chat, but that would be a pain in the ass. So we'll try to distribute that over on X. Final thoughts, guys. Anything that the folks should be thinking about for the Land and Sea world in the near future?
Book 7 is coming.
Yeah. Cover's been turned over for book 7. We're just waiting for final word for the audiobook file so that we release in all 4 formats simultaneously. Book 8 is cranking. We've got a lot of fun stuff. We are really, the story evolves quite a bit and stuff. You're going to enjoy where we go with season 2. Unless you live in Seattle. I'm just throwing that out there.
Very good. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people think Seattle needs to be cleaned out. So, all right. That's all we've got for today. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate all you guys for backing if you haven't backed it yet, go back it. Even a single book tier is very affordable. We appreciate everybody. And as always, stay safe.